Good afternoon. My name is Arthur Fitz, and I'm very pleased to represent the American Numismatic Association in introducing this afternoon's final speaker of this year's Maynard Sundman Littleton Coin Company lecture series. We were privileged to have David Sundman around on the floor this week. He was here actually this morning for an earlier presentation. This afternoon, the fourth presenter is Oded Paz. He is the founder and president of the Unrecognized States Numismatic Society. He is an A&A district representative and a frequent lecturer at A&A shows and conventions around the country. I had the privilege of listening to him last year in Baltimore with another very, very nice presentation. So speaking today on instruments of banking and finance, local currencies and coins, Oded Paz.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me and having the misery of actually having to listen to me. If I could have the next slide. Thank you. Well, just like I was introduced as the founder and president of the USNS, the Unrecognized States Numismatic Society, since June 2003, I studied many different instruments of banking and finances throughout the world. Now, there are many reasons for issuing local currencies and coins, and I will be touching on some of these reasons as well as showing samples of such currencies and coins. Most of these are meant to be alternative currencies to the currencies that are what is considered legal tender in the country where these local currencies are being used. And I am going to touch mostly on local currencies in the United States. I'll be showing a few of these local authorities which actually minted coins or printed currencies, and it's safe to say that they all did this as an instrument of banking and finance, which is the main subject of this lecture, and to increase the usage of local currencies in the local area, thus enhancing local trade. Now, just because I'm going to talk about some of these issues does not mean that I actually agree with them. I'm going to show you a few interesting aspects of local currencies. I'm going to talk about fiat money and the feds. And just because I'm saying it does not mean I agree with it. I'm just showing a point of view of some people in this country. Okay? So don't kill the messenger. Next slide, please. All current countries have coins and currencies in use. Why would anyone want to print, mint, and use local currencies? Let me start with a short story. It was a very slow day in a small town in Texas. Times are tough. Everybody's in debt and lives on credit. A rich businessman drives through the town, enters the hotel, and lays a $100 bill on the desk and says he wants to inspect the rooms upstairs and pick one to spend the night. As soon as the man walks up, the hotel owner takes the $100 and runs next door to pay his debt to the butcher. The butcher takes the $100, runs down the street, and pays his debt to the pig farmer. The pig farmer takes $100 and pays his debt to the supplier of feeding fuel. He goes and takes the $100 and pays his debt to the local prostitute because it's hard times and even she gives her services on credit. And the hooker takes the $100 and goes to the hotel and pays her bill for renting rooms at the hotel. Well, the hotel proprietor leaves the $100 there, and the rich businessman comes down and says, I don't really like the rooms here. He takes the $100 and walks away. Nobody earned anything, but the whole town was now out of debt and looks forward to the future with a lot of optimism. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how the United States government is conducting business today. And with that said, let me start my presentation. So the first question is, what is money? Money is an agreement within a community to use something as a medium of exchange. And let me repeat this because this is the foundation of what money is. An agreement within a community Community could be an area, a country, a world, a globe, to use something as a medium of exchange. An agreement may be voluntary or coerced, conscious or unconscious, and may fluctuate with time or remain fixed. Within a community, as I said, large, small, local, national, international, virtual, cooperative, competitive, whatever. To use something as a medium of exchange, the money itself can be issued by a central authority or created ad hoc by two consenting parties in a mutual credit system. It may store value or merely mark transactions. It may be backed or valued with something tangible or merely by the issuing authority. And it may take any shape: coins, bills, chalk marks on a blackboard, or bits of data on a computer. All of this is money. If I can have the next slide, please. Thank you. All national governmental currencies today are issued and managed by central bank fiat. Fiat in Latin means let it made or let it be done. The value is guaranteed by the authority issuing it rather than by an external reference or backing such as gold and silver. And I would assume that you know that today's US dollar is not backed by gold and silver. It's only backed by our belief that the money is worth what it says it's worth. There's only three ways of designing a currency system: fiat, without reference to anything else; valued by a commodity, when its value is expressed in terms of the value of the commodity, whether or not it is redeemable in that commodity, such as silver, gold, or even airline miles. Okay, the airline miles are a commodity. It could be pigs or stacks of hay. Or backed by a commodity when the currency is in fact a claim to a given quantity of that commodity, which typically requires having a stock of that commodity on hand to meet such request. Silver certificates in the old days, if you know what I mean. Okay, and I assume that all of you are numismatists who know what I'm talking about. Now, the central bank is an organization which is officially in charge of managing the national currency. Some central banks are owned by private banks. And I assume that some of you know that the US Federal Reserve Bank and the Deutsche Bundesbank are actually owned by private banks. Some owned by the government: the Banque de France, the People's Bank of China, and the Bank of England since its nationalization in the 1950s. Some are mixed, like the Belgian Central Bank and the Bank of Japan. All central banks are responsible for internal stability. What is internal stability? Fighting inflation. And external stability, which is value compared to other national currencies. So when the US dollar drops in compared to the euro or the yen or whatever, we're talking here about external stability versus internal, which is inflation. They have a variety of means at their disposal to achieve such aims. Intervention, like buying or selling the national currency in the market in exchange for other national currencies. Interest rate fixing, or fixing reserve requirements for the private banks. All of these techniques really boil down to fixing the maximum quantity of fiat currency that the private banks will be capable of issuing and at what cost. Okay? Now, we're accustomed to considering only our national currency as real money. However, national currencies have been designed for specific purposes only and cannot fulfill certain social objectives, such as foresting, trade, and cooperation, or ecological sustainability. Some currencies already are operational today or being proposed for the future are designed to fulfill such objectives and operate best when they are used in tandem with the national currencies. And that's what my lecture is all about. Next one, please. A wise man once said, "Give someone a fish and they'll eat for a day. Teach them how to fish and they'll eat forever." So what is the problem with money? When I say money, I mean the money that we use today, our dollar bills in our pockets. Many of us are active in creating and maintaining a sense of community amongst our friends and neighbors. We try to conduct our business locally, but more and more our hands seem to be tied. The world is in serious trouble, both ecologically and economically. Few people would argue with this, but how many would recognize a major cause of our problems? We assert that the major problem, perhaps the major problem, lies in conventional money and the form that it takes. Every modern community depends on the flow of national currency through its internal economy. The money swirls in and rushes out again. Money flows into the community from exports, visitors, and government spending. It flows out on imports, travel, and taxes. When local industry loses an export market, when fewer visitors arrive, when government cuts spending, the money that goes out is not replaced by money coming in. Did you all understand that? I mean, when there's less money coming in, and you're still spending the same money out, you have less money in the community, in the area where you are. So when the amount of money circulating in the community falls, so does the level of trading. Business declines, people lose jobs, not because they have nothing to offer, but because there's not enough money to go around. In the contest for a share of this limited supply, people work in ways that damage their own health, the environment, and the well-being of their community. People are prepared to do almost anything for money because they need it to take part in the game. This is the source of the problem, since money, by virtue of its very structure, is scarce and hard to come by, especially when you have less of it. Now, there's 3 reasons for this. And if we can get the next slide. And you see the slides are very scarce. I'm just putting the main important things on the slides, or else you wouldn't be listening to me, you'd just be reading off the slides. Anyhow, there's 3 reasons for this, for the source of the problem. First of all, there's only so much money in circulation. The second, it can go virtually anywhere, and so it does. And the third problem, you can't issue it yourself. Or can you? All over the world, communities suffer from a shortage of money simply because there's only so much of it, it's gone elsewhere, and they can't print their own. When you think about it, this just doesn't make any sense. Money is merely a mean of exchange, a set of tickets, a number in your bank account. It has no value in itself. You can't eat it, wear it, or build anything with it. What's the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill? What's the difference? The only difference is that we agreed all together that one is worth 100 times than the other. Other than that, what is the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill? Absolutely nothing, except for our agreement between ourselves that one is worth 100 times more than the other. So money is actually a measurement of value. Like an inch measures the length, or a ton measures weight. Will we ever have a shortage of this measurement? No. Could you imagine a carpenter working and he can't work anymore because he ran out of inches? I don't think that can happen. Yet we are often idle when we lack the means of exchange, which is money. There may be plenty of materials, equipment, skills, time, and goods and needs to be met. But we cannot work or trade with each other because there is no tickets around. There's no scores on the sheet, and there's no means of measuring relative values. So the problem actually suggests the solution, which is we can get around it by creating local money to finance local needs, to generate wealth and protect us from poverty. A local currency cannot leave the community it serves, so it ensures connection between people exchanging skills, goods, and services. With a local currency, the community is less affected by fluctuations in the external money supply. We don't need the US dollar. Don't give it to us. We have our money to exchange between us. Local currencies have been common throughout history, emerging whenever a community needs to protect its internal economy from outside disturbances such as war or depression. And I think you all know depression script. The social credit movement was one example, and most successful systems were used in Austria before the Second World War. Not surprisingly, the current economic climate has spawned several systems ranging from small, informal self-help networks to hundreds of commercial barter networks now operating throughout the US and increasingly elsewhere in the world. The growth of these commercial networks is extraordinary. In 1991, 18 years ago, it was reported that $5.9 billion of trading among 240,000 customers, clients, in 450 systems in the United States alone. Let me repeat those numbers for you, okay? 450 local currency systems, 240,000 people who are game to these local currencies, $5.9 billion exchanged hands in 1991. 2 years later, in 1993, it almost doubled to $10 billion at a time when the US economy as a whole were still standing still. The growth has occurred despite the high cost of taking part. At present, there's a system called the LET system, LET Local Exchange Trading System. It's the most advanced form of local currency in circulation. Now, the first LET system was developed in Canada. Canada's Comox Valley, 1983, where some people adopted the barter network model and turned it into a full-scale community system with greater advantages, yet operating at a fraction of the cost. The prototype was very successful, despite considerable antipathy and even active resistance from key elements in the local community. About 20 similar systems sprung out across North America just at that year alone. 1988, a combination of factors, research and development costs, and fragile user confidence caused trading in the Comox Valley to decline virtually to a standstill. So it took from 1991 to 1998, that system has declined. Now, while this created the general loss of confidence in North America, LET systems began to grow worldwide. And since that time, many have formed. We have about 70 LET systems in New Zealand, 200 in Australia, and in Britain, it started from 7 systems up to about 150 today. Now, for a local currency to work, people need to be able to use it alongside conventional money. And its design should resolve the 3 fundamental problems of money. A local currency should ideally stay within the community it serves, be issued by the people who use it, and exist in sufficient supply to meet the needs of that community. The LET system, of course, meets these criteria. It's friendly, convenient, cost-effective, simple, and secure. It works much like a bank or a building society. Everyone has an account, but instead of money transferring from one bank to another, all exchanges are within a single system. And when I say money, I mean the regular money, the US dollar, the fiat money, the local currency. Now, how does it work? Each new account starts at a zero. Therefore, it may hold a positive or a negative balance. Those with negative balances have quite simply created the money, which is the positive accounts. So this local money is essentially a promise by some members of the community to give service to others. Money like this, which you issue yourself, is personal money. Personal, our money, our way to use money. Conventional money, while very easy to spend, is very hard to earn, and we talked about that. As a result, it's coercive by nature. People with money exercise power over people without it. Who pays the piper calls the tune. In a personal network, however, money is easy to earn. Everyone has money to spend. Everybody has a skill or a product that they can give and they can use in order to earn that money. We're acknowledged for what we give to others. Acknowledgement in the local money has value because that money is actually the commitment of people in the community to the community. This money is created as a mutual credit. Each transaction is recorded as a corresponding credit and debit in two participants' account, and that's if we don't use regular currency or regular coins. The quantity of currency issued is thus automatically sufficient. And, unlike fiat money, it does not depend on the judgment and effort of a central authority. It's up to the community to make that decision. Using the national currency, such as US dollars, as a reference is more convenient for convertibility and easy pricing. But anchoring a local currency to national fiat money leaves the local currency system vulnerable to any crisis occurring in the national currency. Thus the importance of this feature will depend on the particular national currency chosen as reference. And yes, most of the local currency used in the United States is actually tied to the US dollar, although not necessarily, and we'll see some samples in a little while. The lead system, in most other, as in other complementary currencies, the amount of money exchanged in any transaction is negotiable. LETS is thus flexible enough for use in diverse communities where products or services requiring a greater variety of skills, experience, training, equipment, or risk are exchanged. Okay, I've given you enough theory. Let's look at some real local currencies. And if I can have the next slide, please. One of the oldest and original money is the Ithaca hours. The concept is very easy. Ithaca hours are issued by a central issuer in Ithaca, New York, and it promises to pay 1 hour of the issuer's labor in exchange for the note of an Ithaca hour. I can therefore take an hour's bill to, say, a plumber, who will work for an hour at my home, and take the Ithaca hour as currency. Now that he has an Ithaca hour, he can go to a restaurant in Ithaca that accepts the Ithaca hour, eat a meal, and the restaurant can use it to get its pipes fixed, or its washing done, or deliveries taken care of. So a man's hour is a man's hour. And some people say, well, my hour is worth more than your hour. It's a matter of negotiation between you. Next slide. Now the slides are going to go faster. Berkshires. Berkshires were first launched in 2006 by a small group of business owners and community activists. Their goal was to strengthen the local community and encourage commerce, and it worked. It's in use in the southern Berkshire region of Massachusetts. What features allowing Berkshire to become the most successful complementary currency in the United States? Their exchange banks. As a local merchant, if you accept Berkshires and take in more than you can spend with your local suppliers, you have the option to easily turn the local currency back into national currency, into the US dollar. This liquidity allows for happy, uninterrupted acceptance by local merchants because they can always turn it into regular US dollars. This convenient liquid exchange market exists each day between national currency and Berkshires. What they were actually able to do is convince the local banks to say, we will accept the Berkshires for US dollars and vice versa. You can bring us US dollars and buy Berkshires. When you spend national currency and buy Berkshires, you put the local currency into circulation. A 1 Berkshire note will cost you 90 cents. Not a dollar, but 90 cents. But you spend them for face value. So what you're actually getting is a 10% discount when you spend them. Did you get that? It costs you only 90 cents, and you get $1 worth of these hours. Now, when the Berkshires are removed from circulation, you lose 10% on the out exchange back to national currency. So exchanging a $10 Berkshire note, you will only get $9 in US dollars. And I think you understand how it works with paying, and I won't go into that again. Now, in this region, there are estimated 300 area merchants which accept Berkshires. And it's reported that around 1.5 million Berkshires, or $1.5 million if you want, are in circulation. These notes continually circulate back and forth between users, even more than the national currency in that area, which means people use more Berkshires than they use US dollars in that area. Now, there's no precise method to determine the total amount of dollar figure of these transactions, but one can conclude from their professional operation that the number is indeed very large. So at the moment, there's 1.5 million printed notes or Berkshires in the area, and they're being used every day, more than the US dollars. Next slide, please. Now, this is a very interesting concept, and it's one of the only, actually, it's probably the only currency in the United States in use that actually uses coins and actually uses silver coins as true means of exchange, the Matoli Self-Sufficiency Project. The Matoli Valley is located in northwestern California, southwest of Eureka. It's a region known as the Lost Coast, named because of the terrain is very rugged, and the California Coastal Highway turns inland by passing about 80 miles of the coastline. So if you take, Highway 1 and you want to go there, that's 80 miles to the coastline. As a geographically isolated region, the people living in the Matoli have developed a strong sense of community and a culture of independence and self-sufficiency. As modern society becomes more homogenized and regimented, they feel that it is important to preserve and enhance this relatively free and unregimented society. The first Matoli money became available on July 9th, 2007, and they have proved to be very, very popular. Although 1 ounce of silver can be sold pretty much anywhere in the world for its silver value, Matoli money is bought and sold at the MSSP farmers market and at other places during the year. There is always a 1% difference between the buy and sell, and this 1% is being added to the fund for subsequent minting. The buy and sell prices are posted on the index page of the MSSP website. Now, an interesting thing about silver, which I put in here, and it doesn't have exactly to do with this, but I think it's going to be interesting for you to hear. The value of silver has been consistent for more than 50 years. In 1965, the last year that silver coins were minted for the United States, a loaf of bread cost 25 cents. The coin that you paid for it, a quarter, was containing 90% silver. The amount of silver in that coin is equivalent to about $3 today, which is just about what a loaf of bread costs today. In other words, the value of silver has remained quite constant over the last period of 40 years. And anybody who has a bit of sense can take this and make a whole new lecture about that. What is our money worth? The value of the dollar has declined by a factor of 12, and it's worth about 8% today of what it was worth in 1965. This represents an average inflation rate of 6% over the past 40 years. However, the price of silver in the US was still only $5 an ounce at the end of 2003. The price has more than tripled since then. Using silver as a reference then, the average inflation rate since 2003 has been 25%. Not 6, 25. This means that the dollar is losing 25% of its purchasing power every year. 25% inflation, 25% of us losing the value of the dollar every year. I don't think that the Central Bank of the United States is giving this information out. Let's go to the next slide. And actually, the next slide shows a few more coins of the Matoli Valley. And again, by the way, if you can take a look at these coins, they're beautifully designed, and they show the life of the Matoli Valley. And actually, that's the way they operate there. You know, one person grows sheep and he sells the wool to the person who has the water and the person who does the yarn and so on and so forth. They are a very, very close-knit community. Now, let me ask you a question. How many local currencies do you think exist in the USA today? Any idea? 10? 20? 50? How about 94? 94 active systems today. And if I can move to the next slide. And this is just a list. I'm not going to read the whole list, but woo, the list almost fell. But look at the list. Look how many different places around the country use local currency. Does anybody recognize anything from where he lives? How about the next page? Local currencies being used on a daily basis. Where?
I saw one from my town, but I've never heard of it.
Well, if you give me your email address, I can send you some information, and you might, okay? Some are more active than others, of course, okay? But anywhere and everywhere throughout the United States. A lot of them are in California. Right here in California. Let's go to the next page. Anacostia Hours, Mount Rainier, Maryland. Look how beautiful these notes are. See what they write. We are committed to establishing a local currency system in order to bring face-to-face relationships back to economics and to encourage community with each other. Beautiful words. Next one. Next slide. Gorge Local Currency Cooperative, River Hours, Hood River, Oregon. Look at these beautiful notes. And then underneath, Nevada City and Grass Valley, California. And then the next page, Ukiah Hours, again in California. There's a choo-choo train there. And then the one on the bottom, which is interesting because this new coin has been put in play on July 4th, 2009. I forgot the T. Effective since the 4th of July, 2009 in Phoenix, Arizona. And look at that beautiful design of that token with the hand. Ask for your change in Phoenix bucks at these locations. Now, since there's not a lot of coins being used throughout the United States, I brought two examples from Europe. And that would be the next slide. In Denmark, there's a place called Christiania, Free City. The Free City, or town of Christiania, is a democratic commune which is partially self-governing neighborhood in Copenhagen, Denmark, founded in 1971 as an alternative society which was an offspring of the Danish countercultural movement and the student hippie squatters uprising of the 1960s. And does anybody recognize the leaf on the bottom, second from the right? It's pot. And actually on the top as well, second row on the right. This community actually had bags of pot in the beginning, that these were actually the currency that people traded between themselves. Okay? Then they moved to coins which represent pot. And the last one, because I know you're all tired of me, is Damanhur from Italy. The Federation of Damanhur is a spiritual commonwealth in the Piedmont region of Italy, built in 1977. This and has a small group of supporters. And again, these are the beautiful coins that they use there. By the way, if you go into Damanhur, you must exchange your regular fiat money into Damanhur coins, and these are the only coins accepted within that community. And when you go out, you can exchange it back to whatever currency you came in with. I'm willing to answer questions if anybody has them. Yes?
Would you explain a little bit the laws in the United States regarding the use of this kind of currencies?
I will not get into that. It's a whole lecture by itself. The fact is, and what we call de facto, is that local currencies are being used and the federal government does not go against it. As long as the currency that is printed and the coins that are minted do not resemble in any way, shape, or form US currency and US coins, they do not get involved. The only one time that they did get involved is, if anybody knows about the Liberty Dollars of Bernard von Nothaus, that they claim that these resemble US currency and US coins too much up to the point that they could confuse somebody to believe that this is US legal tender, and that's why they came in.
That's, I understand it, yeah.
Yes.
What's the motivation people want to use this? I don't understand that.
That was the whole purpose of this presentation. They want to use it so they can have money to use in their community and not rely on outside sources of money. Okay? So, what is your profession, or if I may ask? Okay, what was your profession? Engineer. So if I needed to hire you to engineer something for me, and I don't have the money, but let's say I am in advertising, and you need my services, and you don't have the money, we could still have a way of doing business with us without using US dollars. That is the major point of using local currencies.
Something of a barter system.
It's something of a barter system which is used in a local community.
Sure.
Yes. Yes, sir.
But I suppose the Internal Revenue Service would say that you can go ahead and use this all right, but you better fill out your tax statement.
Every
in dollars.
state in the union has its own laws and own rules about Internal Revenue Service and what you should or should not and can and cannot put on your returns and whatnot. Again, it's a very, very complicated issue. There's a few hundred pages of it in the specific websites that deal with this. Too big of a subject to get into, and there is some, of course, legal mud in it. But again, there's 94 systems working in the USA today. There are people who get paid to form such a local currency in in your area who would have more information about how it works. Yes, ma'am.
Is script local currency?
Script is local currency, definitely. I mean, everything that we've seen here is script. That's another word for local currency. Definitely, yes. Yes.
What do you predict for the future of local currency in America?
Wow. My crystal ball is out of whack at the moment. I predict that there will be less use of fiat money and more use of local currency, or at least more use of money or currency that is backed by something real rather than backed by somebody's promise that it is real.
But those local currencies are pretty much fiat, though, aren't they? There's nothing behind them. You can't turn it in for anything other than barter.
No, what is behind it is the skills and the products of local people that you can barter with. And they will not go away unless you're the only one in that community. As long as there are people that have skills, knowledge, and products in that community that are willing to be in that system, then it's backed up by the people. The money is backed up by the people, not vice versa.
So is it governed locally by some group or some?
Yes. Usually it's the local chambers of commerce. Usually it's the local chambers of commerce. But also in some places it was done by young entrepreneurs who thought it was a good idea, and it is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
Depression script that we've all heard of through the
Uh-huh.
Depression of the 1930s, and then was there anything from there up until recent times?
Unfortunately not, because so many changes have been made, especially with the dollar and the silver backing and no silver backing and so on. So no, nothing stayed from that time. But again, why was the Depression script made? There was not enough money to go around. Same like today. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom, but you know, wake up and look around you. There's not enough money to go around. There isn't. We are in a big financial problem in this country. We're in a depression here. There's not enough money to go around. We don't have enough US dollars. What do? I'm a talented person. You're a talented person. Why do I need money from the outside for me to work with you if we're in the same community? I'm sure that even retired people, of course retired people, have knowledge and skills that we can use, and they can use and make something out of it.
But what you're saying, that there's money around, there's plenty of money, but maybe you don't have any, say, for example.
I'm talking about the community.
The community doesn't have, so what they want to do is sell our skills amongst themselves.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, you're a very talented person. You have skills. Okay? You want to use your skills. Your water heater broke. You have skills. How are you going to get your water heater broke? How are you going to get it fixed? There's no money to go around. Use your skills in your community.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Use your skills in your community to make it work. Well, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope you learned something. There's a lot on the internet about this. Just put in, you know, Ithaca hours or Berkshires, and you'll find a lot of information there. Thank you so much.
That's